Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cloud Wars webinar, Amazon versus Google versus Microsoft, with Ben Finkel, Garth Schulte, and Jeremy Shara. Before we get started, we would like to remind you that the chat pod is available for you to ask any questions you might have during the webinar. Following the presentation, Ben, Garth, and Jeremy will do their best to answer some of your questions. Also, a final reminder that we will be posting a recording of this webinar to our blog. The address is blog.cbtnuggets.com, and we'll have that up within the day. And that's all I've got. Take it away, guys.
All right, sounds great. Well, this is Jeremy Chara here with Garth and Ben. This is a webinar focused on cloud wars. Now, we've previously, Garth, correct me if I'm wrong, said that we will not be sitting here spending your time yelling at each other of whose cloud's better, true?
Yeah, well, someone's already drawing things on me, so I think all bets are off now, buddy. It's on.
All right, sounds good. Well, Ben, why don't you start us off with our first poll question of the day?
Sure. We wanted to get a feel from everyone out there in the audience. Which cloud services are you familiar with? You should see the poll right up on your screen. You can go ahead and check the ones that you know and click submit, and you will you'll get to see some live results here. We can start to get a feel for our audience and what people are using, what they're familiar and comfortable and knowledgeable with.
Awesome. And while everybody's doing that, I'll give you an overview of the flow that we're going to have during the webinar. We're going to go through each technology because I know not everybody here is familiar with a lot of the cloud technologies, highlighting as we go through the advantages of each one. Now, myself, this is Jeremy. I'm most specialized in, actually only specialized in AWS. I don't even look at the other clouds because I've dove so deep into AWS that to stop and go learn another one just seems futile. Ben is the Azure master and Garth is Google Cloud guy. So looking at the results, and it's actually, I'm actually shocked. I thought there would be a lot more of a gap between those.
Yeah,
I know.
First, second, and third, but yeah, I figured there'd be more of a gap between 1 and 2 there.
Wow. Excellent.
Microsoft Azure has been, at least according to the numbers that everyone publishes, they have been catching up, and they've been one of the more popular clouds in the past few years. So I think it's not entirely unsurprising that they're as close as they are to AWS, although that is a small gap.
Yeah, but like 5, I'm looking at it right now. 5, from all of the usage, or maybe it's just the group we've got here with us at CBT Nuggets, a difference of 5 between those. It seems appalling. not that I'm appalled by Azure being that close to AWS, but nonetheless. So I wanted to start off by giving a big picture view of the cloud, as in what's the difference between the cloud and doing it yourself, getting your own data center, setting up some equipment, and all of that. Now, there is a ton of stuff that you could dive into with this, but I just wanted to highlight one thing, and I'm going to grab my pen right here. Probably the biggest difference is this concept right here, horizontal scaling. When you invest in your own equipment, meaning you go into a data center, buy the switches, buy the routers, buy the servers, set them all up, and set up a virtualized environment and all that, you have to make the big investments, meaning as you scale this out, not even mentioning the switches, routers, and everything else that you don't have to buy when you go to a cloud provider, but the servers themselves is where a lot of your cost comes in. Anytime you have to upgrade in the traditional world, you have to take these big steps. Like, let's just say you've got a website. Garth's latest idea was to sell toothpicks online. And he's like, okay, I'm going to set up a server and a data center to reach this capacity. Well, with all his marketing, people started buying all of Garth's toothpicks because, it's a pretty popular thing to do. And you start seeing the load come up right here. Well, it hits a point where it exceeds his capacity. Sorry for my fat magic marker here. But it exceeds the capacity of the server that's right there. So Garth has to go buy a server that increases his capacity. And so right there you've got an over-provisioning while he's waiting for the user load to catch up. And then the user load catches up, and he doesn't want to cause dissatisfaction, like you can see right here. So he buys another server early. So all of this stuff right here is considered a waste, right? To where you're just over-provisioning your system because you have to in that world, whereas in the cloud-based world, it doesn't matter what cloud you're talking about, Azure, AWS, Google Docs, you can kind of scale right along with the capacity, turning on and off servers as you go. I would say there's probably one of the biggest differences between the cloud and doing it yourself in your own data center, but there is a plethora of other ones. So,
Jeremy, you just an additional point on that. I love the fact that you say scaling down as well. I think this is often missed when people talk about scaling. They're always talking about scaling up, but traffic patterns change. Sometimes they're burst and sometimes they shrink. The example I like to use is the Black Friday shopping weekend here in the United States, a huge retail weekend. If you run a retail website, you need to increase your capacity for that weekend. But once that weekend passes, you need to decrease capacity. And if you're buying your own equipment, well, guess what? Too bad. You bought those servers. You paid for them, and you're sitting on them, and now they're extra servers that you don't need. So really scaling up and scaling down, I think, is an important point in that.
Yeah, especially with the flurry of social media and all a single Twitter link can do to a website. So as I mentioned, my focus is the AWS world. And in AWS, the main core principles that you're going to run into when you're choosing to scale this thing out is regions and availability zone. That's where it all begins with AWS. The region is what region of the world you want to be in. The the availability zone is which data center in that region do you want to be in. So when AWS spins up a region, so let's just say they've got EU West up here, they'll never put just a single data center. They always have at least two because they want resiliency, redundancy between those two. So when you're starting into the AWS world, you'll go in and set this up in whatever region of the world you believe most of your traffic will come from, and it's usually recommended to span in multiple data centers. The reason for that is because even AWS has outages. Even AWS has power failures. It's happened. And so they always say, hey, you need to get your stuff outside of a single data center. The second realm of AWS, if I could get my slides to switch. Garth, brother? Oh, no, I was going to reach out to you to help. Is the different services. In AWS, the major services that you have when you get started is EC2. EC2 is the cloud computing or elastic computing. This is your virtual servers in the cloud. This is where you'll come to spin up your virtual machines, tear them down. I couple that almost always with auto scaling, which is exactly what Ben was saying. Ben highlighted the fact that as you scale up your site, you can add servers or scale down depending on the load that's coming in. Auto scaling can do that for you. Once it sees the number of visitors go beyond a certain point, it can add more servers, or once your load decreases below a certain point, it can delete servers, and that directly impacts how much you pay for the service. EBS and S3 are the two major storage components of AWS. Now, when I'm putting this up here, these are the services of AWS, and there's so many more than what I could even fit on this slide. Glacier comes to mind when I think of another storage service that's available. But S3 is designed as huge storage. You can store a massive amount of data there. It's replicated and made redundant across multiple data centers, multiple locations, and even published via the web. So it could be web accessible storage. EBS represents the storage that your servers use. So when you come into the cloud, let me put this back into the big picture for those people that are brand new to the cloud world, you'll spin up an EC2 server, which will serve your web content or whatever else you've got going. Then you'll map that to whatever storage you want, EBS, for example, to hold the hard drives of the virtual servers. Man, there's so much I could tell you. I'm biting my tongue, but I'm looking at the clock, and I think I've already overrun how much time I'm supposed to talk. Before I go, well, actually, no, I'll leave that to later. I'm done. I'm passing it on. Who's taking the torch?
Well, like Jeremy mentioned, my specialty, at least for the purposes of this call, is Microsoft Azure, and I'm currently recording courses on certification of Microsoft Azure. One of the cool things about all of these cloud services, even though we call it Cloud Wars, is that, well, A, whatever I'm doing is the best, of course. But B, a lot of these services mirror each other. The structure that Jeremy just sort of outlined with Amazon is actually the structure that a lot of the services have duplicated from vendor to vendor to vendor. So you still have, you have the same idea. You have zones and regions inside of Microsoft Azure. You've got all the various different services. You have the elastic scaling. But one of the ways, or what I want to talk about a little about how Azure separates itself, is I think Microsoft's commitment and integration with enterprise technology solutions. If you work in an organization of any size, you probably have some Microsoft products. If you work in a large organization, you've got a lot of Microsoft products. It's just simply the way it is. They've been doing this for more than 30 years. They are, you know, they're the Death Star, to take a current analogy of technology. And as the Death Star, when they want to focus that laser beam on something, they can really have an impact. And over the past few years, they've been focusing their laser beam on cloud providers. So Microsoft is really an enterprise solution. They're involved in every line of business that you can imagine: finance, healthcare, et cetera. And the way they leverage that, or the way they make that work, is that they use their existing products to segue into the cloud products that they offer very, very seamlessly. So when they started developing Azure, Microsoft recognized that they had this huge install base. They recognized that they had all these products in the marketplace already, and they've been able to develop cloud products that integrate with those existing on-premise solutions very easily. And that makes migration, well, like I said here, it makes it a breeze. You can integrate Azure cloud products with your on-site Microsoft products very easily. It's the hybrid solution. It's the premier ideal hybrid solution when you're using Microsoft. Then on top of that, they made sure to implement their technologies inside of the tools and the platforms that really a lot of people are already using. If you're programming or developing with .NET, a lot of people are, you're using Visual Studio. Sorry, excuse me there. And Visual Studio is easily integrated with Microsoft Azure. You can actually connect it right up to your Azure subscription. You can manage all of your Azure resources, all of your Azure web apps, your mobile APIs, your databases, right through Visual Studio. On top of that, and I think this is really cool, something that Microsoft does not get a lot of credit for, is their integration with some of the free open source software solutions out there. Now I know Microsoft has a reputation, and I think it's a well-earned, a well-deserved reputation for being kind of old and stodgy and slow on the upkeep. But the past few years, they have really been expanding their outreach into this open source software community. And to that end, on Microsoft Azure, you can integrate with all of the technology that you're used to using. You can build Linux servers out. You can connect. You can use Node.js with Microsoft Azure. You can deploy Docker container clusters on Microsoft Azure very, very easily. So they've made a real commitment, a real push to get involved with the community. And because everyone out there is already using these things, it makes it very, very easy to kind of on-ramp and get on board with the cloud again. I think they're really the ultimate technology solution provider in that regard.
Ben, I'm curious. You mentioned that Azure has direct integration with Microsoft products. What kind of things can you do with that?
I'm sorry, with Microsoft which?
Like you said that one of the benefits of Azure is that it integrates directly with a lot of the Microsoft products. And what kind of things can you do with that?
Well, so I'll skip ahead to the bottom of my list here, where I listed Azure Active Directory as one of the products. I think most people are familiar with Active Directory. That's your on-site identity management solution that you often use for protecting your on-site networks. Well, they also have a complementary product called Azure Active Directory, and you can set up a routine automized synchronization between your on-premise Active Directory and the cloud Active Directory, and essentially federate all of your on-site user identities into the cloud without any additional work. It just happens automatically. So that's one of my favorite ways, actually. I think it's one of the most interesting ways, because Active Directory is one of those Microsoft products in particular that's got a really deep and involved user base inside of enterprises, inside of organizations. They've also got a really tight integration with System Center Service Manager, if you're familiar with that, SCCM. which is a configuration management tool for servers. So you can manage from SCCM, you can manage your on-premise and your cloud servers at the same time through the same interface, which is really cool, I think.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
But so that's one of the products that I wanted to highlight there, the Azure Active Directory on my list. Some of the other things, again, similar to AWS's EC2, their infrastructure, I always have trouble with that word, infrastructure as a service offering is Azure VMs, Azure Virtual Machines, which are scalable, highly scalable virtual machines in the cloud. They are easy to spin up, as you might expect, running Windows Server, but equally easy to spin up running Linux. You can interact with them through Visual IDE inside of your browser, through Visual Studio, or through a command line interface. The platform as a service offering is called Azure App Services. This is comparable to Amazon's Elastic Beanstalk. And you may be more familiar with the term Azure Websites, which was what they previously called it. Last year they bundled up a number of their different services, Azure Websites, Azure Mobile Services, and they call it Azure App Services. And they try to treat those as a sort of unified singular platform delivery service. And then when it comes to storage, you have the option to use Azure SQL, which is a cloud-based version of SQL Server, Microsoft's SQL Server. Again, if you're familiar with using Microsoft SQL Server, it's a very popular database and a lot of people are. The tools that you use to manage and connect to your Microsoft on-premise SQL servers can be used to manage your in-cloud Azure SQL servers. You don't have to relearn any new technologies. And you can even migrate or replicate your databases from on-premise out to the cloud or vice versa if you need to. When it comes to sort of new wave data storage solutions, Azure Tables and DocumentDB are two different NoSQL storage solutions that Microsoft Azure offers. So I could, just like Jeremy, I could go on and on and on about Microsoft Azure, but we want to give Garth his chance to talk here as well. So take it away, Garth.
Hey, thanks, guys. Save the best for last, huh?
I don't know if you saw the poll. I think I didn't mention it because Google Cloud was kind of trailing the
that poll was rigged.
Nah.
All right. Anyway, no. In all honesty, guys, all the clouds are awesome, and they're all feeding off each other to move forward. Right. A lot of them have similar products, and so really the war area is I think in pricing. Right, and we're the primary beneficiaries of that, of course. So you can't go wrong with no matter what cloud you choose. But with that said, Google is special. And the reason they're special is because they've been doing this for a very, very long time. And it really revolves around this right here, their infrastructure. They've been building their own private cloud for over 15 years to support some of the biggest products on the planet, billions of users, right? And it all starts here at the data center level. And the really neat thing about Google is they custom build everything. In their data center, there isn't anything that they haven't built, from the tiles to the ceiling to the pipes to the chips to the case to the wires that connect the fan to the CPU. Everything is built by Google. And you'll actually see that through all of their infrastructure. That's their hardware infrastructure, their data center. But their network infrastructure, same thing. The pipes that connect these networks. They have a global meshed network that is connected by fiber. They've got POPs set up, points of presence around all of these, and edge caching around the edge of their network as well. So the whole idea is get them onto our network because we have the fastest global network there is. And then it also goes to the software level. They built data center-wide software, home-built, custom-built from scratch, and Google is quite frankly responsible for a lot of the big data scene that you see today because they are the masters of storage, right? These are the guys that indexed and made the internet searchable, after all. So their infrastructure is a work of art, and what they eventually did, they're a little late to the game, of course, but what they did was they're opening up that infrastructure to us through their cloud platform. So now we can run our applications, our solutions, our infrastructures, all of that on the exact same infrastructure that uses our products. So it's a pretty incredible platform, and once you're on it, you really notice the speed. And they are the masters of speed and scale, obviously, to support, billions of web searches a day is definitely pretty impressive. But you'll see if you look at their product lineup, and this is just a small handful of them, that they line up with Azure and Amazon for the most part. You've got your compute options and App Engine, that's your platform as a service, fully managed development environment. You've got compute engine, which is their virtual machines, private cloud-based networks. You've got container engine. Containers all the rage these days. And container engine is actually Docker plus their new open source product called Kubernetes. Docker is awesome. Containers are awesome by themselves, but they're a lot to manage. So Kubernetes is a scheduling and management system ahead of that, so it can scale up and down your applications inside of your containerized applications, I should say. Storage. A lot of the same stuff here. Cloud storage is their immutable blob storage. Cloud SQL is their relational MySQL databases. Cloud Data Store is for structured, huge structured objects. So it's there are no SQL data stores. You can store billions of objects in there. But really where Google shines is the data scene, right? They're all about big data. They're pretty much responsible for the big data scene as we know it. They built these underlying technologies that Hadoop and MapReduce and Pig and Hive and Spark and all these things came from was because they released the white papers into the open source community, and boom, the big data scene exploded. And you see that in their platform. You have tools like BigQuery, which is interactive querying of large data sets, and they tout terabytes of data analyzed with queries that take seconds. PubSub for enterprise messaging between applications. Dataflow, which is their ETL service for streaming and batch loading data or integrating data between applications. Dataproc, which is their new fully managed Hadoop, MapReduce, Spark, Pig, and Hive service, because who wants to manage their own big data infrastructure? It's a lot of work getting a big data infrastructure set up. So now you can spin one up in literally 2 minutes and have access to all those tools ready to go. And then Data Lab is another new one. It's great that we can get all this data from things like BigQuery and load it up from Dataflow, but analysis can be difficult. So Data Lab is all about interactive data visualization, and it's really an exploration tool on top of your big data. And of course, they've got a host of APIs, prediction APIs, translate APIs, they've got machine learning APIs, and even cloud endpoints, which is really neat because it allows developers to build endpoints against their own libraries that they built here in the cloud. So yeah, Google's cloud is impressive. It's on the up and up, and hopefully someday soon it'll be able to compete with those other guys.
I'll be able to compete with the other guys. I think they're actually doing a pretty good job. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, and Ben, Garth, I didn't bring this up just because AWS wins. But this is actually, it's as if God himself smiled down on our webinar, because this email came to me today, this morning, at 7:15 a.m. And it was from Gartner, who is not biased towards anyone. Most of you know who Gartner is. They do an unbiased study of this. And if you read this white paper, it's really eye-opening because, first off, I found out, I'm always about the big three. There's all kinds of cloud providers, some of which are actually VirtuoStream. You guys ever hear of that? It's owned by EMC. And then I was like, wow, they're actually coming up. And their CenturyLink has their own cloud. So anyway, not only does it bring up all the clouds, but check this out in their key findings. And I thought this was so insightful. They said, the best providers have an extensive array of additional services that extend across the spectrum from infrastructure as a service to platform as a service. And I wanted to bring that up as a huge point. I mean, one of the things, I didn't really cover many of the benefits of AWS over the other clouds, or, like Google has big data is their kind of niche that are there. But one of the biggest things that you're going to see is all the cloud providers are going to do the same stuff. They're all going to provide virtual servers. They're all going to provide data storage. They're all going to provide database platforms and so on and so on. But essentially, AWS continues to span out in all the different services that they provide, so you don't have to do it yourself, like multi-factor authentication. Oh, there's a service for that. The old phrase of like there's an app for that. You can kind of build into your applications that you're offering from the cloud all of these different services, and that's why AWS is always up at the top, is because of the breadth of services that they have. Everybody kind of does the same stuff, and they all have their own niches. AWS has probably the most of it, but regardless, whatever cloud platform you choose, count the cost. Meaning, most people, when they get into Google Cloud or Azure or AWS, will begin to code their application into that platform, meaning it starts using those different services. So technically, can you move to another cloud easily? Yeah, sure. Just kind of yank your servers and move them to another cloud provider. But it's all of the back-end work that goes into making your application compatible and harvesting, if you will, the services of that cloud. The other thing I thought was really interesting is in this Gartner report, they're like, this right now, the cloud industry, and this report is not old, it's like a couple months old. The cloud industry is in a state of upheaval. A lot of people will exit the market, pivot, or totally build a new platform because there's going, and we know the three winners, if you will, although I was surprised out of this report, some of the other people that even came up there. And I was sad for you, Garth. I saw Google. Like I kind of covered its score because I was like, man, I think Google.
Wait, who's Gartner again?
yeah, I don't know. Someone smaller than Google, I'm sure. But anyway, we could talk on, and we have more content, but I think it would be awesome to open it up for questions and just general conversation. What do you guys think?
Well, actually, Jeremy, I think what you were just talking about there segues nicely into a question we got in chat from Armando about where does Vcloud Air fit in. Vcloud Air that he's asking about is an offering, an infrastructure as a service, elastic infrastructure as a service offering from VMware, if I'm not mistaken. And the answer is it fits into that huge list of cloud providers. We're here talking about the big three. I'm making air quotes with my fingers there. But there are so many different cloud providers out there. There's IBM is a big one. Rackspace is a big one. You know, you can't spit these days without hitting somebody offering a cloud provider. And I find that last point on your key findings interesting, that some will exit the market, pivot, or build or acquire a new platform. That's probably true. There's always people entering and exiting a market, but the growth in the cloud market right now is such that a lot of these vendors, a lot of these services are going to be around for a long, long time. They are not in danger of edging anyone out yet. And I think if you look at the numbers, they're all growing their user bases. No one's really stealing users from anyone else yet.
Yeah, and that actually brings up another point then, and that is you don't have to choose one cloud and stick with it, right? There's a lot of different hybrid cloud scenarios that you can, choose a couple of clouds. You can hybrid between a cloud and your on-prem. You can hybrid between multiple clouds. The point is, find the cloud that works for your solution and build multiple solutions across multiple clouds. You're not locked into one specific cloud here.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking at a few more questions. I think we got a few more minutes. William is saying, I'm in college. Is it better to pursue my CCNA cloud or specialize in a specific vendor? Well, CCNA Cloud is actually Cisco's latest certification offering on cloud integration. Honestly, I would, if I were you, William, I would specialize in one of the cloud providers. I would go for a Google Cloud or an Azure Cloud or AWS certification, simply because I love the CCNA Cloud, and it pains me because I'm pure blood Cisco, if you will. But I think if you're really looking for a marketability, getting certified in one of those clouds and finding a company that's using that cloud is huge. The other benefit, I think, of grabbing one of those is everybody's kind of copying each other. It's kind of I look at AWS, and again, I'm not bashing the other clouds, but AWS was there first, right? They were kind of like the pioneer in this, and I see them kind of like the iPhone, right? The iPhone, I still have one, was first. It was awesome, and ever since then, I've looked at Android as a copy. I'm like, it's just somebody copying what Apple did with the iPhone. But at the same time, Android has grown bigger than the iPhone, and it's more available and all of that. So the beauty is once you know the iPhone, you can jump to the Android, and it's not that big of a jump. Same thing with getting certified in AWS or Google Cloud. You're going to see kind of the same thing. It's like, they call it elastic beanstalk over here, like Ben was saying. You guys got any questions in that queue? I'm trying to read them as fast as I can that you guys want to jump in on. I'm all game for that.
Well, we missed one of the first ones that came in. Roger asking how can these cloud certifications help his career if he's still in a traditional technical environment. And I don't know if Garth, if you want to handle that, or Jeremy, you want to handle it. My answer would simply be you're not going to be in that traditional technical environment for long. You will, in one way or another, you're going to be in the cloud. You probably, even a small-sized organization is going to have products that are being hosted on third-party servers already. Either the vendor's hosting them or you're moving them up into the cloud, and that's only going to increase. That's only going to continue to grow over time. Having at least the basic knowledge, the certifications to demonstrate that you you're actively pursuing and interested in how to work inside of these cloud environments, is really going to help you, I think, in your current organizational structure. It's going to help you grow. It's going to help you keep your job and, get a better job. And on top of all that, I mean, it's cool. It's really, really neat stuff. I know Jeremy and Garth will agree 100% with that. It's a lot of fun to work on this.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer for many companies, too, just because of the efficiency and cost and the time savings and not having to manage your own equipment. And it's a no-brainer. It's where the industry is headed. Another great question there from John. Oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
Oh, no. The only thing I would mention is be careful on counting the cost. It's one of the slides we didn't cover, though. I know it's a no-brainer from hey, you can spin this up and get started, but, man, those costs climb quick when you start using it. I remember, I think, was it Google Cloud I signed up for, Garth? Weren't they giving like $200 from the class that you had at IC3 a few years back?
Yeah, 300.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, $300 of credit. I can run servers for a lot. And after playing with it, I'm like, bam, $300 gone. I'm like, unbelievable how fast that goes. So it adds up quick. Anyway, you were saying, Garth.
Yeah, John had a great question here around pricing. He asked what the panel's view on pricing for the cloud providers. Do we see further reduction on price, or do we think it's stabilized? And I can tell you from Google's perspective, they're following Moore's law when it comes to pricing, that it's just going to keep going down and down and down. And as long as there's competition, which there's a lot of right now, the only way that they're going to stay competitive is through that cost. So absolutely, I think we're just going to see the trend just continue to go down and down over time.
Every week I get an email from Microsoft about a reduction in the price of one or more of their services.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just constant, nonstop. It always happens.
Yep, they are constantly dropping. I'm looking at a question from Faisal. Sorry if I said that wrong. Saying, if someone has a background in Cisco networking like Jeremy, CCIE, blah blah blah, how would the cloud relate to his career path? It doesn't. It doesn't really. CCIE routing and switching, I can tell you that when I'm working in AWS, I'm like, they kind of made VLAN simple. You click a couple buttons, and they don't even call it VLAN. They call it a virtual network or something like that. They just kind of wizard their way through VLAN. So they kind of do the data center stuff. They make it very simple and hide a lot of that stuff. So the CCIE in networking, like I am, I've still got my feet on the ground, meaning I would go into a data center for somebody hosting a private cloud and design that for them. I would not be in the GUI of AWS. I would say it's a totally different career path, although, obviously having a CCIE in networking, I look at it going, okay, I see exactly how that is. Oh, I can connect up to the VPN of a VPC and do all that. But if I would not say, hey, you should go get a CCIE if you're going to also certify in AWS. It's like two totally different worlds. I'm looking at the clock. I'm looking at the questions, and I'm thinking they keep coming in.
Well, we've done in previous webinars is we've made sure to answer all these questions. We'll leave the chat panel open for a few minutes. We're gathering a log of the chat, and we'll email out questions or answers to the questions there. We can absolutely do that.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thank you guys for coming. You guys are awesome. Thanks for jumping into the Cloud Wars, and we will hang out for a little while answering questions via chat.